Hi, so my name is Tiana, and today I'll be discussing the book called Saving Capitalism for the Many, Not the Few, written by Robert Wrench. So this book basically brings light to the issue of wealthy individuals as well as big corporations that are controlling the current system of capitalism. So they're doing this by having a strong influence over the government, where we're seeing the wealthy are becoming more wealthier, and the inequality gap between the top wealthy individuals and the average working class is dramatically increasing. So the author goes to define capitalism as a system that is structured by a set of rules where in any market you do require the government to help enforce these rules. He also goes to say that there are five building blocks of capitalism. So these are property, monopoly, contracts, bankruptcy, and enforcement. So what we're seeing is that big corporations and wealthy individuals are influencing the government within these five building blocks. So what they do is they provide funding and contributions to political parties, where then these parties will help favor their own interests. So with having this economic dominance, we are seeing that they are becoming even more profitable and that there is a diminishing middle class. So the reason for this diminishing middle class is because first of technology replacement. So there are automated machines replacing jobs. There's also globalization, where cheap outsourcing is a major option, as well as CEOs are taking a large share of the company's profits by investing heavily into the shares of the company, as well as they are cutting back on labor expenses. The author goes to say that capitalism can be saved in two ways. First is by citizens gaining countervailing power. So this would most likely take place in the form of a third political party that would be voted in to change the ways of the government, as well as to have businesses act in the favor of majority of the citizens, not just the top 1%. His second solution also is to have a minimum income provided to every single American every month once you turn 18 that would let you become economically independent as well as sufficient. So I think this book is compelling to the general reader because it does attack the issues of big corporations and the government. However, the author does leave you hanging because with the two solutions he has provided, he offers no practical explanation on how this would help fix the problem. The author is pretty much correct when he states that today's capitalism hugely favors the rich by bending the rules as well as backroom deals with the government, as well as the concept that big corporations and wealthy individuals influence the government by having these agencies and policies created to favor their own interests. That is something just that can't be argued. However, I do feel he's a bit more idealistic than realistic when it comes to his solutions. He also does state that in the past, the government has corrected itself to favor its citizens. However, I find that it could just revert back to the way it is now, which is to favor the rich. So the author first tries to show how these big corporations influence the government by providing quite a few examples relating each to the five building blocks of capitalism. So he goes on to say that these big corporations will act in risky, even many times illegal behavior because they know the funding they give to these political parties will act in their favor if they by chance get caught or prosecuted, and they would help bail them out. However, the book does goes to say that there are many big corporations who provide contributions and funding to the two major American political parties. So I feel like for the government, if they could possibly protect a whole industry, but to just single out specific companies to protect would be extremely difficult given that you're getting a lot of funding from many different companies. As well as if you're a company that gives funding and contributions to a political party that happens to not get elected, at that specific time, that funding might just become insignificant. As well as I find the author focuses more on a consumption-based economy. So there is no mention about, say, corporate with social responsibility. So I feel that many of these corporations could still care about their public image. And I feel in a generation where we live in social media, it's so easy for this activity to come to light. So the author then goes to talk about because of the inequality between the top 1% and the average working class is dramatically increasing. So say for example, CEOs can earn 200 to 300 times more than their employees. The citizens have lost complete trust in their economic system, as well as feel that hard work and effort will get them absolutely nowhere. However, I do think we're still seeing a high enrollment in university and colleges where many students will work hard to get good grades and feel like they still could have a good career and life ahead of them. As well as the same as just for some employees and corporations. Many do work hard for promotions and feeling like they could still have a good life. So the first solution the author provides is countervailing power, where change is in the hands of its citizens. He does provide this as a sound concept. However, there is no explanation on how this would become a reality, and it's extremely uncertain on how this would even happen. There are examples in the past in the United States where there have been a third political party to vote for. However, I think you have a very slim chance of winning because you do need big funds to run a campaign. And I think without corporate funding, the probability of winning is very low. So the closest outside an election to citizens lobbying against big corporations was Occupy Wall Street. So this was a people-powered movement that spread across over 100 American cities. So its main goal and purpose was to fight against the power big banks as well as big corporations had over the political process. So I feel like if we were going to see a third party emerge in the form of countervailing power, I feel like this is what the time we would have seen it. So the author does provide no examples of any citizen uprising, and I sometimes feel maybe he thinks that the force that these big corporations and wealthy individuals have over the government is something that is extremely difficult to stop. I also feel that citizens need to have enough desperation to make a change. And I feel like you can be very frustrated with how the process works, but I'm just not sure and convinced that there's enough desperation there. So the author finally discusses his second solution, which is to provide a minimum income to every American that would be sustainable to live off of. However, if you do want to earn more or have a higher standard of living, you do have the option to work. But the main goal and purpose of this is to have individuals focus their time on what they're interested in. However, the major flaw in this solution and argument is the lack of explanation on how this would even work or even how it would be implemented. There are no strategies discussed at all. I feel like another major concern is where the money would even come from. So you could look at countries like Switzerland who are thinking of implementing this, or even Sweden who do have high salaries for all types of jobs. However, this is financed through very high income taxes, where I feel like you're basically paying for your own minimum wage. So with having this minimum income, I feel there would be a lot less people who would work, where we would see jobs being lost, as well as there would be a decrease in enrollment into educational institutions such as university and colleges. So the skills and knowledge we hold as a society would be at a standstill, if not start to decline, where in the long run we could see innovation dramatically drop. But with having this minimum income, there is more money to be put into our economy because there is a middle class who have more income to spend. However, I don't think this increase in demand could be met by our supply because there would be a lack of labor. So I think we would see prices dramatically increase, where then we could demand this minimum income to continuously start to rise, where it would just make no sense anymore. So I feel in the short term, there could be some benefit. However, in the long term, I think it would just dilute the whole purpose. So to conclude, this book does point out the major issue of large corporations as well as wealthy individuals influencing the government. That overall concept is agreeable because it is a reality. However, my major issue and problem with this book was his two solutions of countervailing power as well as the minimum income, because he lacks in complete explanation on how this would become a reality or how this would even work. So I would have loved if he went a lot deeper on on strategies on how he would make this happen in the real world. But I do like that it does bring attention to a very real issue. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.